Many years ago at the ashram, I was invited into a practice, and they mentioned to us that it was a very transformative and powerful practice that had been handed down through the generations for many years. And it has a Sanskrit name, Ashirwad, which essentially in English we could say as loving blessing. And in this practice, we were invited to bring someone into our awareness. Can be anyone, it can be a person, an animal, any being where you can feel unconditional love toward that being, and you bring them into your awareness and you let that love that you are be shared, be emanated, beamed to them. You don't even have to know where they physically are. You just have them in your awareness and you beam that love to them. You share that love to them. And in that practice, inevitably what happens is anyone that our wanter is holding a grudge against will tend to show up. And we were taught that if that happens, see if the love that you are can flow even toward them. It's a choice point when someone that you have a grudge or a disturbance with comes in. It's a choice. You can hold on to the grudge, hold on to the grievance list that justifies the withholding of the love, or you can let it go. That's the choice in that moment. Now, if you can't let it go, that's okay. You don't judge yourself in any way whatsoever. You just return back to your being of origin, whoever it is, person or an animal, that you can feel that love toward, and you start there again. And my teacher, she said, eventually this will start to build a momentum, and there can be a liberation of the love that we are through this very powerful transformational practice that has been handed down for generations and generations. Goes way back. And when I began this practice all those years ago, it was so liberating to feel that love that we are, that unconditional love. And the practice was so powerful for me. I resonated so much with it that I stayed with it every day. And what I would notice is every time I did the loving blessing practice, I would get this image. Eventually what would happen is I would get this image in my awareness of two young Mormon men coming toward me with their, black pants, white shirts, ties, satchels, with their literature, in their shoulder bag, coming toward me to convert me to be a Mormon. And as soon as that image would come into my loving blessing practice, I would notice that the love that I am would collapse. I wasn't willing to send them the love. I had a grievance toward them. I had my wanter had all kinds of reasons justifying the withholding of the love. I had had many experiences growing up of interactions with them trying to convert me and feeling pressured, and I would be on my soapbox against that kind of thing. I was pulled into a belief system that you shouldn't try to convert people to your religion. I would hold on to that very tight. I was very fervent and determined to, point out the flaw in this, that people shouldn't try to convert each other to their religion. I was very anti that. That was a very strong stance I had picked up as a young person because of my experiences with people in that religion trying to convert me and putting pressure. And there were even times in school where a person who was a Mormon who felt that he was better than me would disparage me or demean me because I wasn't a Mormon and say hurtful things. So I had this whole background, a whole grievance list, a life journey of grievance against the Mormons for this. So when I would do my loving blessing practice, I would notice I would have this image of two Mormons, coming toward me to convert me, and the love that I am would be withheld, and I felt justified in withholding it. So day after day, I would do this practice, and that would happen, and the field would collapse. And in this practice, what you're invited to remember is, at that point, it's a choice. You can either hold on to the grievance list, or you can let it go. If you can't let it go, that's okay. You just return back to someone that you can send that love to, share that love to. And my teacher would say, it'll start building a momentum. Don't judge yourself at all if you can't send the love. That's okay. Just return back to a being that you can send the love to. Day after day, I just continued with that practice. Week after week, month after month. And every time I would do the practice, I would get this image of two Mormons coming at me to convert me. I even got to the point in my practice where I would, put my hands together at my heart and say, "Dear Divine Grace, can I please have one loving blessing practice without Mormons trying to convert me?" But they would always come and always come. Well, many months of doing this practice every day just started to build a momentum, exactly as my teacher had said it would. And one day I'm doing the loving blessing practice, and I have this image of two Mormons coming at me in their black pants, white shirts, ties, the satchels with the literature. And as soon as they arrived, I noticed that my hands clenched into fists, very tight fists, and my jaw tightened. And there was like I was so mad. Like, here they are again. And the love field collapsed. And in that moment, I was noticing my hands clenched in these two very tight fists, and my jaw so tight. And in that moment, I noticed I was so tight, and I was so right about it. I was so right. I was so right. I was righteous. I was righteous. And in that moment, all of a sudden, I realized, oh, wow, I'm doing the very thing that I'm upset about them doing to me. I'm being righteous. I think I'm right and they're wrong. And that's how I perceived what they were doing to me, that they thought I was wrong and they were right. That's how I had perceived my interactions with them. And so in that moment, I realized, as there were these two clenched fists and my jaw squeezed tight, that's when I realized, oh, I'm so right. So I get to be right, but I don't get to be love. I get to be right, but I don't get to be free. I just get to be here in my prison of rightness. I can hold on to this. I get to be right. I'm so right and justified and withholding the love for them for what they did to me. But I don't get to be love. I get to be right. And in that moment, this split second moment that just happened and was revealed, all of a sudden I realized I had no more interest in being right. I was more interested in being love. And I experienced the freedom, the liberation of the love we are. And tears of gratitude came streaming down my cheeks, and I just shared this love that I am with them so fully, so naturally. It was so liberating. The liberation of this love we are. And as my journey continued, day after day, week after week, there would then be another person that I had a grudge with, and it would release, and another and another. As the days and weeks unfolded, just like she said it would, it built a momentum, and I was more interested in being the love than being right. And as the years unfolded, it was probably 2 years of this, then the final person that I was withholding the love from released in the same way it did with the Mormons. And it was my father who left us when I was a baby. My mom was pregnant with my younger sister at the time, and I was a baby, a little guy. Not a baby, more like a toddler, because my sister was 1.5 years younger than me. So I was a little guy, but I don't have any conscious memories of him as a little guy. I just had a whole lifetime of not having a father. So I had talk about a grievance list. I had a whole lifetime grievance list of reasons justifying the withholding of the love. And so each time he would come in, I would feel the field of love that I am collapse, and I couldn't send it to him. And my wanter had its grievance list to justify the withholding of the love. And then one day, just like it had with all the others, even that, the most intense one of all, finally released when I realized once again, oh, I can hold on to this and get to be right, but I don't get to be love. I get to be right, but I don't get to be free. And it was released, and then there was no one, no thing that was now being withheld from the love. The liberation of the love we are. Many years after that, I was on a walk. Probably 7 or 8, 9 years after that, I was on a walk in my neighborhood. And I turned up a side street, and walking right toward me were 2 Mormons. Black pants, white shirts, ties, satchels with the literature. And I was so relieved in that moment because I didn't feel like I needed to turn and run or move away. I didn't feel like I needed to walk toward them and counter their method of converting me. None of that was going on, and I felt so much gratitude for all the years of the loving blessing practice, and how in that moment the love that I am was flowing so fully toward them. I had so much gratitude toward them, and I was just aware of these young men walking through the neighborhood, and just aware of how many moments where the door is slammed in their face, or the things that are said to them, or the things I myself had said to Mormons when they tried to convert me back in the early years. I just had so much compassion. These 2 sweet young men walking through the neighborhood. I just had so much love and compassion for them as we approached each other, and they saw the look on my face, and they were so relieved and so happy. And they said, "Sir, can we walk with you today?" And I said, "Absolutely. I'm out on an exercise walk. Would it be okay if you joined my pace?" They said, "Absolutely, we can do that." So they turned and started walking the direction that I was walking. Now the 3 of us are walking side by side. I'm to the left, and they're to my right. And the one in the middle, the one closest to me, he introduced himself. He said, "My name is Brother So-and-so of the Church of Latter-day Saints, and this is my partner, Brother So-and-so of the Church of Latter-day Saints. And we believe this." And he told me one of the Mormon beliefs. I can't remember what it was, but he told me the whole belief. And the whole time he was telling me, I was so relieved that I didn't need him to be not doing this. I didn't need him to I didn't need to convince him otherwise, or counter the logic, or use some sort of strategy to, help him see the error in his, narrow thinking like I used to do. None of that was in play. There was just love, just absolute love. I was so grateful to be having this moment with them. The love that I am liberated. And he told me another belief, and we believe this. And he told me another belief, and another one, and another one. He told me about 7 or 8 or 9 of the Mormon beliefs, one after the other. And then this very key moment happened where he paused, and in a very sort of firm voice, he said to me, "So, what do you believe?" And as soon as he said that, it was like time stopped for a split second. It was like time stopped as soon as he said that. And I had this vision in that split second. I had this vision of them, the two of them as little boys, about 4 or 5 years old, sitting in a Mormon church with mom and dad and aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody. And up at the front of the church at the microphone was this very important person who was saying things to these little 4 or 5-year-old boys. And the things that that person was saying were all the things that they just said to me, the Mormon beliefs, one after the other, and every, Sunday over and over. And not only did they hear these things, from this very important person at the microphone in the church, they also heard these things from mom and dad and aunts and uncles and everybody. And I realized in that glimpse, that momentary vision, that that's how a religious belief happens. We get told something over and over, and the human mind is very malleable, very impressionable, and it takes that on and it becomes a belief system. It's a system now that our mind has to make sense of this very confusing, chaotic place called life on planet Earth. The mind loves to have a system that it can make sense of this place with, and it loves to be right. The mind loves to be right, to be on the right team and have it figured out. There's safety in that. There's a feeling of security and the answer to all the big questions, like what happens when you die and all of the, scary things. There's a system that the mind grabs hold of and wraps itself in and feels comfort in, feels safe and secure. I got to see all of that in that split second. Next thing that happens, I see me as a little boy, about 4 or 5 years old, and I didn't grow up in a religious system, but I got indoctrinated in another way. I got to see me being told, "You're Mitch Rosacker, and you're from Colorado, and you're an American, and you're athletic, and you're smart." All those things, and I realized in that moment, oh, that's how the religion of Mitch happened. It's the same thing. It's just another system of beliefs. What we all really are is prior to all of that. We are these eternal, absolute, amazing, divine beings that have these human experiences where we get indoctrinated. Our mind takes on a system of beliefs. It starts with our name and our form and our language and our culture and our stories. And if we get introduced to one, a religion, we pick up a whole system of beliefs. And in that moment, I realized what we all really are is prior to all of that. We are these divine beings prior to all of that. And we then pick up these identities, these beliefs. All of that was seen in a split second. And now time is back to regular time again, and the completion of his question is happening. So, what do you believe? And all of a sudden there's a giggle of recognition going on in me, and what came out of me in response to that question, so, what do you believe, was, well, actually, less and less. Yeah, less and less. Why would that be said? Because what we are is prior to all the beliefs. All of that was seen in that moment. And those, I didn't think of those words. They just tumbled out of me. And when they did, that's all I said. I just said, oh, well, actually, less and less. And when I said that, it just blew their minds. It was like a transmission of truth. It just, and they just went quiet. They didn't speak another word for about 15 or 20 minutes. We were now just 3 walking embodiments of love. There wasn't another word. Just still and peaceful and loving. And they had wonderful smiles, sort of blissful looking smiles on their faces as we just walked through the neighborhood without a single word for 15, 20, 25 minutes. And then I could feel the energy kind of coalescing back in his mind, the young man closest to me. And as it coalesced back in a little bit, he then looked at me as we're walking and he says, "Who are you?" And once again, I didn't plan the response. I didn't think of the response. It just came out of me, just tumbled out in response to his beautiful question, "Who are you?" I am what you are. We are this love. It was quiet again. Pure love. They dropped right back into the heart. 3 walking embodiments of love again. I am what you are. We are this love. Wow. So pure. Just tumbled right out from the truth that we are. They were quiet for another 20, 30 minutes, not another word. And then I could feel it kind of coalesce back in a little bit again. And he asked me this final question from such a sweet and pure and authentic place within his being. He asked, "How did you get this way?" And what came tumbling out of me in response was, "Oh, well, I just kept turning my attention within and directly experiencing this love we are, which is prior to all the beliefs." Quiet again. And what we notice, it's basically a description of the loving blessing practice. Once again, I didn't plan on saying that. It just came tumbling out in response to his beautiful question. How did you get this way? Oh, well, I just kept turning my attention within and directly experiencing this love we are, which is prior to all the beliefs. Quiet again. It was just quiet. Another 20, 30 minutes, not another word. 3 walking embodiments of love. It was so amazing, powerful, and lovely. Then we'd now at this point been walking for, an hour and a half or something like that. And I could feel that our time was coming close to an end. And I was standing in front of my house and I said, "I want to thank you both so much for this wonderful walk that we've shared together today. And I'm so grateful for this experience that we've shared together." And the young man who did most of the talking, he said, "Can I come and talk to you another day?" And I said, "Sure. You know where I live. You can come ring my doorbell and we can talk about anything you like." And his friend said, "Me too." And I said, "Absolutely." And then the first young gentleman, he said, "Can I give you a hug?" And I said, "Absolutely." So he came in for a hug. And as he came into this loving, warm embrace, he started crying, just such gratitude, just pouring out of him, holding on to me really tight. You could tell he didn't want to let go. You could tell he was just so grateful and so much love, and he was crying, and it was so sweet. And that lasted for some amount of time. And then his friend said, "Can I have a hug too?" And so he came in and same thing. He started crying and we hugged and he held on tight, and it was tears of gratitude. It was so sweet. That came to completion. And it was amazing to see what happened next. He looked at his satchel with the Mormon literature in it, and then he looked back up at me. Then he looked back at his satchel. Then he looked back at me, and you could see sort of like a apologetic look start to arrive on his face as he looked back at his satchel again and back at me. And you could feel the wanter in him starting to reassert itself, because, he was supposed to be converting me to be a Mormon. And you could feel it starting to re-arrive. And right in that moment, he then said to me, "Can I give you some of our literature?" And I laughed. And I said, "Well, you could, but as soon as I go in the house, it's going to go right in the trash." And he laughed and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, "Oh, there's nothing to apologize for. It's absolutely okay." He says, "Can I have another hug?" And I said, "Sure." So he comes in for another hug. His friend comes in for another hug. And now there's the three of us having a group hug on my front sidewalk in my neighborhood. We're crying together. We're laughing. We're hugging. It was this beautiful reunion in the heart of being together. It was so sweet, so pure, so natural. And then the hug completed itself, and we wiped our tears, and we looked at each other one last time, and they turned, and side by side they walked down the sidewalk together, not saying a single word, as they just walked, two walking embodiments of love. And I just stood there on my sidewalk and watched them continue their journey, and just had these sweet tears of gratitude coming down my cheeks for what I had experienced with them that day. This wonderful walk of reunion. This natural reunion in the heart. And I was aware of how grateful I was for all the practices that I had learned over the years, and especially the loving blessing practice. I was aware that had I not been in that practice all those years and continue to be to this day, that love that we are would still be being withheld. I would still believe that I was right. My wanter would still be holding on to its rightness. I would have never experienced that with them that day. I would have turned and ran from them as fast as I could. And I never would have even had the chance to have that experience. I was so grateful for the practices, and the loving blessing practice in particular, this practice that allows us to liberate the love we are.